All right, Bulls and Bears back with another financial news economic report today, also known as another dose of economic reality. Why? Because we read between the lines, we read between the data, we put all the pieces of the puzzle together, we connect the dots to tell you what's really going on with the economy. Monday was a big sell off. That was August 5th. Today's August 6th, obviously. And I expect markets to recover today. We've seen this in the past where volatility really starts picking up and you see big down days followed by big up days. But then the up days sometimes don't equal the down days. And then you start seeing a downtrend where you have big down days, up days, but they don't quite make it to where they were. And you see this downtrend of lower highs and lower lows. Now, that's what I expect. Could the market makers come out and completely bring this thing back up to new all time highs? Absolutely. But when you don't have buyers at the end of the day, the market makers don't want to sit there holding the bag, right? They want to make it look like there's nothing wrong. When you see a huge drop like we did yesterday, and we'll talk about the magnitude of the drop. It wasn't huge. I mean, it was 1,000 points. It was pretty big. But if we look back at history, it wasn't that big. But I expect later this year, bigger drops in the market, the Dow Jones and all the major indices. And we're only one major news story away from a market changing situation. What if it comes out where the banks were colluding to keep home prices high? Or what if it came out that um, big companies were colluding together to buy as many properties as possible to keep home prices elevated so they can then raise rents on everybody to keep everybody in debt and to keep home prices high so people would pay more property taxes? I'm not saying that's definitely happening. But what if something like that came out? What if? Just think about that. What if? And if that did come out, would you be surprised? I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. What other news story could bring this market down? Could cause enough of a scare to bring these markets down? World War III knocking on the doorstep. We have escalations now, just like I said would happen. When all else fails, they bring you to war. War is good for the economy. That gives the banks reason to print more money. Um, and we'll see how it goes. But let's talk about the magnitude of the drop here. Monday, August 5th, we saw a 1,000+ point drop in the Dow Jones. Pretty big. But when you look at percentages, 1,033 points, that was a 2.6% drop. Now, when we look back at history, it's not that huge. Go ahead and take a look at this. Remember, what was it again? 2.6%. Yeah, 2.6% drop Monday, August 5th. Here's some of the biggest drops of all time, the top 10 actually. 1987, we saw, looks like about a 24% drop, 23, 24%. October 1929, before the Great Depression, that was about what, 13%. March 2020, the onset of the health crisis, that was looks like 10, 12%. October's a big month for declines, isn't it? 1929. Again, you see the picture here, 1932, 1932, 1929. So Great Depression type of stuff there when you see over 10% drops happening. 1987, again, October 26th, just a week after that other drop there, it was down another 8%, right? So wasn't a huge day. It was a big point drop, but percentage-wise, it wasn't a record breaker. But pretty concerning considering all the talk of this strong economy, how everything was fine, how consumers are resilient, all the stuff we've been hearing about, how inflation was under control and it's coming down. But when we look behind the numbers and when we look between the lines, we saw the state of the U.S. consumer. We know that people are getting further behind. The debt is climbing, delinquencies are rising everywhere you look. So we didn't have to look too far, to get to the real story of this whole thing here. Well, let's get into some recent news here that's going to further underpin what we've been talking about here on this channel. Okay, what happens when prices get too high for people? Are they going to just not eat, or are they going to find ways to get stuff? Maybe even without paying. Here's a recent article here. Shoplifters pointed to higher inflation in the economy as top reasons for stealing. Shoplifters blame retail theft epidemic on high inflation in the economy. So wasn't just me making that up, folks. It's just common sense. That's what happens when the economy starts plunging. And no, you won't look at it or you won't notice it if you just look at the earnings or the stock market, with the exception of yesterday. Um, it gets to a point though where there's no retail buyers and it's just the top 10% buying and selling to each other. But when there's no suckers left to buy, meaning not the top 10%, but the bottom 90%, regular retail investors, do the top 10 percenters want to continue to hold the bag? Well, look at what Warren Buffett did a few days ago or a week ago now. Went to a record cash position for his investment company. So pretty interesting, folks. And again, this is global. I like to point this out because people think that something big is going to change if we elect somebody new in November, and they think this whole thing is going to get turned around. Folks, it's not going to get turned around. We need a major cataclysmic event to trigger a sell-off, to trigger a correction, uh, maybe even an economic crash. That's what would fix this. It would be painful. People would lose their houses. People would lose their jobs. You would see a lot of turmoil, a lot of suffering. That's the only thing that's going to fix this, folks, because the other direction, which is inflationary, so instead of a correction, you get further, if it's not a correction, it's further misdirection of the economy, which would be prices going higher, the housing bubble getting bigger, cost of living continues to go up. But look what's happening here, just to prove again that this is global. Korea, foreclosures surge in South Korea as homeowners struggle with mortgage payments, folks. Everywhere you look, it's the similar central bank manipulation, right? When the economy is slow, drop rates, turn it into a borrowing frenzy, a debt binge, and it'll look, for a while, it'll look like the economy's growing because people are spending money. It's mostly borrowed money. So debt is skyrocketing in the background, but just on the surface, it'll look like the economy's growing. That's what all these countries do. That's what all these central banks do. That way they can keep their jobs and they can say, look, the economy's growing. Look at the consumers out here spending money. Everybody's rich. In the meantime, the savings rate's plunging. People are emergency withdrawing from their 401ks, robbing Peter to pay Paul, balance transfer, the game. It goes on and on, folks, here. Let's take a look at this here. Consumer Affairs. Look at this headline. This is ridiculous. The economy is growing, but so are auto repossessions. That doesn't sound right. So they're confused. How can the economy be growing, but also auto repossessions? Well, that's because people taking out loans, including auto loans for vehicles that they can afford, that's looked at as economic growth. When people borrow a bunch of money, they say, oh, look at the economic growth. Look at all this. Look at the car sales. Look at the home sales. Folks, but it's borrowed money. And yes, it makes it look like the economy's growing, but even Consumer Affairs can't figure this out. They're saying that doesn't sound right. They're questioning how can the economy be growing, but repossessions also exploding higher? That's because people are making the economy look like it's growing because they're borrowing money and buying things they can't afford. So then the repossessions tick up, and pretty soon it'll be foreclosures. And, it's just a snowball. And yes, they can mask it for a while, but it's getting to a point where it's going to be very, very difficult to keep this thing under wraps. This week, consumer credit snapshot, unemployment claims and mortgage rates. The Fed issues its latest snapshot of consumer borrowing. That's coming up this Wednesday. So we're going to be on top of that for you. Consumer credit monthly change in billions of dollars. I'll just break it to you right now. Credit is still expanding. Banks, for the most part, are not tightening, even though under these conditions, if the banks thought that they were going to be held accountable for the loans that they made, banks would be tightening. But banks know they're not going to be held accountable. They know there's just going to be a big liquidity injection when massive amounts of their customers can't pay back their loans. Right? That's why the banks continue to loan out money. It's pretty simple. Guaranteed life support equals more credit being issued to the consumers, aka debt. And would you like maybe some more signs that consumers are struggling and barely getting by? Take a look at this. 1 in 3 parents say they can't afford back to school shopping this year. Survey says 1 in 3, folks. 1 in 3 parents can't afford back to school shopping. Well, they'll put it on a credit card, so you could argue they can afford it as long as they have credit. But when will the credit card companies say no more credit line increases? When will we see them not only no longer increase the credit limits, but decrease? When that happens, it's over, folks. This illusion of economic growth is over. That's when it really hits the fan. Foreclosures will start cranking up. Layoffs will start increasing, probably doubling and tripling. Folks, another piece of data here that I wanted to add to this report today. Defense spending, $913 billion, almost $914 billion. So we're approaching $1 trillion in defense spending. Total money spent for all branches of the military, including equipment, operations, maintenance, personnel, and war. So $1 trillion. And, we're told that if we didn't do this, we would get, the United States would get attacked, right? The bad people would come and get us. So it's fear that has people supporting all this military spending, what we call defense budget. What they don't tell you is the people that they're protecting us against are funded by the U.S. We supplied the weapons. That's what they don't tell you. It's insane, folks, but it's true. I'm not making this up. Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. What do you think about this, folks? Let me know what you think down in comments. Make sure you are subscribed. Critical time. We're heading into some very, very concerning times here. What type of news is going to come out? July was an insane month. We had an assassination attempt. We had a cyber glitch, a faulty update that took down computer systems worldwide. In many cases, for a few hours. In some cases, it was just a short few minutes. What if something like that happens again? But what if it's for a longer period of time, folks? Get ready, prepare, invest wisely, prepare accordingly. See you on the next report. Keep stacking, everybody. Big love. Bye for now. Peace.